You said you no longer wanted to live with me and shack up with me because you wanted to be my wife, not my girlfriend.
Right, because I wanted to know where the
That don't
relationship
sound like
was going.
pressure to you?
It sounds like me voicing where I see my life going. It sounds like me saying, this is what I would like. You can...
Hey guys, and welcome back to Little Black Book. You know what time it is. Talk to you guys about Devale and Khadeen part 2. We're also going to discuss around that as well how monogamy actually benefits the low value male rather than the high value male. So guys, if you're new to the channel, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on the bell button for notification of the uploads. And for those of you returnees, well, you already know what it is. You got the minerals. You got the minerals. Alright, cool. Listen, don't forget to grab your merchandise as well. So, talking to you guys, obviously, about the monogamy affects the low value male. I really want to discuss this because obviously after watching Devale and Kadeem, you know how I do. I like to go back, research and break things down. And so I actually went to listen to a few of their blog posts, some of their podcasts, and watch a few videos that I had put on YouTube and kind of just sift through what had been said. Now, this sex issue has been on the table for quite a while. It's not just now. It's a thing that's been going on for quite a bit. It's been a theme, actually, a part of their relationship for, you know, a little bit of a while.
Sex becomes an issue for us. You think about our sex life from 18-year-olds who are like young kids in college I'm ready to bust wide open and then you want to throw in...
which lets me know that, as someone put in my comment section, this is a core issue in their relationship. What's the core issue? The core issue is that during that video where they showed us on their podcast, their discussion was, which was really interesting because it was about the terminologies that were used, that why do women ask for monogamy rather than why do women ask for marriage. It was the fact that why do women ask for monogamy as if that women should potentially could be asking for polygamy rather than women asking for marriage, which I think the wordings there will use very consciously, because when we start talking about high value male, low value male, we start talking about hypergamy, hopogamy, and we start talking about red pill, blue pill, purple pill, black pill, yellow pill, every type of pill there is out there. We have to start being able to speak the kind of language that they speak and understand what they mean by this. And so with the Devale and the Khadeen situation, the point that Devel was making on this, as I explained in my first part of the video, was around the issue of how he had a higher sex drive, and she had replied by saying, had I known that I would have spent my time trying to catch up or trying to meet your sex drive, maybe I would have thought a little bit differently about marriage, or I think she said monogamy. And so this is a key aspect. First of all, this is why I explained in the first video that marriage is not about how you feel, sis, or how I feel, bro. It is about the institution of glorifying God. Therefore, there are things that happen in marriage where it's not for your... I'm going to say this again. It's not for your benefit, bro, or sis. You may not benefit the way you wanted to benefit. Why? Because marriage is a life of sacrifice. You sacrifice what you really wanted in order to make this thing work. And it's meant to mirror the life of us and Christ in unison. But we're talking about monogamy here. And in that conversation, monogamy was brought up a few times. And some of you kind of pointed out in the comment section that it did seem a bit like he was hinting at potentially, not being monogamous, right? And looking potentially at polygamy. Right?
That you don't really want to do. Why do women constantly push monogamy on men? If you know that you don't want to have to deal with him all the time just wanting...
And they were discussing with two other couples. And some of the points that were made were quite distinctive as to why there is an issue, number one, within... I wouldn't say an issue that's critical, but an issue at the moment why between Devale and Khadeen is an issue in terms of marriage. And this is anybody's marriage. This is not me trying to critique their marriage, but for us to look at it, analyze, and learn ourselves as where we could be in a relationship. Number one, the one thing that was said was marriage.
Be in relations for a long time and everything be fine. And then the pressures from society and friends is like, oh, y'all been together that long. Why aren't y'all married? Right. It's like, if we've been doing this and we've been happy and enjoying it, why is marriage like we have to do it? Or
And I think this is a key aspect of conversation. We're now talking about what we've experienced, what we've understood, what we know about commitment, right? Yes, commitment can happen outside of marriage. That's absolutely true. And this is why I say that understanding the purpose of marriage is quintessential, because there are a lot of women, not faith-based, who are asking for marriage without understanding what this actually means. Many of us are doing what I call just knocking down the next domino, because that's what we think we should do. And actually marriage is that next step for us to show the world that we're actually fully committed. But the truth of the matter is that yes, you can show this level of commitment without the marriage. The marriage actually isn't quintessential. The marriage is a legal document of paper to say to the rest of the world that we are legally together. And there is no potential backdoor legally. But monogamy itself is a mindset, it's an attitude, and it's also an idea. Okay, and before anyone jumps my neck about, from the dawn of ages, men have been polygamous. They've also been monogamous. So we can go back there and show you there. You know, Adam and Eve wasn't Adam, Eve, and Steve. It was Adam and Eve. So just before you start your business, so you know, the idea of monogamy. Okay, and I was relating this back to the answer to the title, is that it doesn't benefit the low value male and the high value male. And how we define high value and low value is that the high value male often has power, status, and resources. The low value male lacks in resources, lacks in power, lacks in status. And so the higher value you are, okay, the more that monogamy seems to play, the more that monogamy may seem to make less sense for you. Why? Because actually what has happened in the past, outside we should say a Christian terms of how it should be, is that naturally the instincts of the male is to have a multitude of women, an harem, you know, to do what we see in the Bible with King Xerxes and Esther. He has not just one woman, he has many concubines. We see David, we see Solomon have the same issue. When there are kings in a land, because there is a disparity, listen to what I'm going to say, because there's a disparity in wealth, in resources, in power, and in status, in comparison to the other people in that society, there will be what we call hypergamy. Okay, and there will also I would call it, you know, that there will be a dominance by certain levels of men. Why? Because they have the power, the status, and the resources to do so. I mentioned also hypergamy, and that is I call it an art. It's a thought process. It's a mindset that is evolutionary. That comes with the natural basic instinct, which is that, and it often we attach this to women, where women date up or marry up. So they marry out of their class into a higher class in order to secure resources, power, status, and I like to add one more: worship. Because the higher you are as a value male, the more that you obviously have a platform, and therefore when you attain a woman, due to the instinct, why I'm adding worship is because of the way that we think about human beings, and the way that I believe that God created male and female, and the way they understand it is that when you get into higher positions, you are worshipped in some shape and in some form. And so you see this even biblically, where there's different words in the Hebrew and the Greek for how we worship. Because to worship someone doesn't necessarily mean to worship you like a deity, but it's to give you obeisance, or to bow down like the queen. Yeah. If I would, in some shape of word, the word worship in its totality may not be to worship a god, but I would worship the queen. I would, you know, that's why we sing "God Save Our Glorious Queen." Yeah. Anyway, so we sing those songs, okay, to show our appreciation, but we also to show that there's a level between me and you. Okay, I bow down because there's a level between me and you, right? And and you see this in society, that women do things to attain this type of worship. How do we do that? By your looks, by gaining power. You know, and so now, as I said to you guys before, the social media platform has become altars of people's lives. And so now people have followers. Who else has followers? Those who are deity and gods and religions and faiths. They have followers. And so now we have social media becoming mini gods with a small g. And when women are able to, and I mention that because that's to give you an idea and a grasp of how when you gain social power, okay, when you gain social status, it gives you access to followers who can give you what? Worship, adoration, and fill your ego. Okay, so when women are dating up, marrying up, that's also a part of the equation. Now, in terms of what Devale was saying, linking it back to what he was saying, he was mentioning the fact that obviously, why do women want to, tie a man down to monogamy? And the truth of the matter is, like I was going to say, is that when there is a greater disparity between resources, power, and status between the higher echelon and the lower echelon, or society has a much broader spectrum, right? Then hypergamy has more benefit to the women, because society is built on a patriarchy. And so because of that, women are tasked to try and find ways to try and equivocate or get onto equal terms. How do you do that? By marrying someone up. And that gives you more access to resources, power, and status. So as Devel was talking about women asking for monogamy, in this society, in this society, when we have I would call a culture of monogamy, that many people expect there to be monogamy in this type of culture, then the higher ended male, and let's consider Devale a high value male because he has status, he has power, he has finances.
To Midwood, and we were pretty much also too, I would see him from a distance. I was a cheerleader, he was a football player, so I'd see him at the games and never say anything.
And so there won't be a shortage of women who will want to come after him, right? So what's his incentive to stay monogamous? Well, the society doesn't reward you for being a cheater. Although men will be men, and I say that in the quotation terms, that men will never really get the full whack and spectrum of, I would say, disappointment and ridicule for cheating. But the payoff here is that when you do divorce, when you get married, is that they take half, okay, and they can take more than that. You know what I mean? So it's not the way up. One has to weigh these options. For instance, Jeff Bezos, how much did his wife take after that? So let's say he classed him as a high value male. Monogamy at this moment wouldn't be benefiting him. Why? Because at the moment now, the one wife that he's got is not fulfilling the needs that he has. Whereas if he chose a polygamous route, then similar to David and similar to Solomon in the Bible, he would have the opportunity right now to go forth and prosper, okay, and have many women at his go, right? And so the monogamy in a society like this with hypergamy is affected strictly by the closeness of between rich and poor. And so in a society where you can be you can be okay, right? I want to say you can be okay financially, right? I mean, if we talk about, yes, there are huge tiers between rich and poor, but actually the gaps between you being okay and them being necessarily rich isn't that too far. You know what I mean? You could be relatively wealthy, right? How many people are going to meet a billionaire? Like, how many people are going to marry Jeff Bezos, are going to marry the guy from Facebook, right? So the levels of someone just being okay wealthy are easily attained now. Therefore, women are more comfortable being hypergamous without it looking hypergamous. Why? Because if I want a man with a six figure, and a society there's a lot of people that can make six figures, then it's not really as much of a hypergamy move, right? It will just look like a woman has standards. But if the gap is huge, then it will look like a hypergamous move. Why? Because we can see clearly, hold on a minute, you've come from a background where you don't earn that much money at all, and you've gone for a man that is earning so much money, right? And so it looks obvious to move. And the thing about hypergamy here as well, I know I'm talking about a lot of different subjects. The thing about hypergamy here as well, in this particular instance, is the fact that, it goes both women and males. So there's a trade-off, okay? And I want to give this background because I wanted to understand the psychology of what's happening in that conversation between Devel and Kadeem. And the trade-off here between in hypergamy is that when men have resources, power, and status, they trade it off for women who have looks. which is why they go for a certain type of guy, right? And then you have women who have looks, trading it off for resources, power, and status. And we see this biblically when Esther, it's not necessarily a trade-off, but you see it, Esther is chosen because she's what? Beautiful. And so when she's beautiful, what does she have access to? His power, his wealth, his status, etc., right? His resources. So with Devel and Khadeen, the conversation, and again, I already told you in my part 1, I didn't agree with the statement that women pressure men into monogamy or into marriage, because that's absolutely a choice. What I would say is that society now, because of the construct of it and the push for monogamy, and I'm not saying monogamy wasn't always around, monogamy's always been around, but the way that we're focused on monogamy now, okay, the push by women now is that they want this security. Okay, they want this security. They want to be secure. They want to be held down. They want to be, you know, in a safe, emotional, physical, financial, spiritual arena of a relationship. And so with Devale and Khadeen, what was interesting was that when they were talking to the people in their video, they were saying, a brother said, I married because I almost lost her. And so one of the reasons why these men are marrying women, their women, is that they're scared to lose a girl. And rather than actually being that I want to marry you, there was a conversation which was that I'm scared to lose a girl, which Devel agreed to. And in that video, I realized that, okay, that's the reason why they were dating for 6-7 years. And then when she decided she wanted to implement a standard, he wasn't down with having a standard. But you know what? Frick it. If you want to get married, I don't want to lose you.
What was the thing that said, you know what, I got to get married?
I almost lost her.
I was scared where he was going to
No.
Because he doesn't want to lose her, he decides to get married. Well, when he do that, the foundation is wrong, which they mentioned about how they got married, and the foundation wasn't necessarily the right foundation in their latest blog, Monogamous versus Expectation of Reality. And so that clearly lets you know instantly that they started on a foot, or he started on a foot where he was already on the back foot, because he really wasn't trying to get married.
We know
two
that you pushed
people-
monogamy on me.
I pushed monogamy. I forced you to get married to me?
Time out.
He was happy to go the way he was going, right? And so what a lot of men do, just like Devel did, is that they tie down a woman because they're scared they may not meet another one that is as good as her. They recognize the woman is a great woman. They recognize the woman is good. They recognize the woman is a sound partner. But because of the fear of committing, and you know, all men go through it, even myself, you think about it, like, if I commit, this is it. It's done. There ain't no other gal. You understand? Like, there is no other mistakes I can make. You understand? Because once this is done, we're divorced, and divorce is heavy. There is something spiritual about divorce. It's not just heavy in terms of emotional toil. There is something spiritual about a divorce that it affects you even after it's happened. You know? You know, and one of the guys admitted that, you know, when the reason why they didn't want to get married is because obviously when you get married, obviously, you know, the lack of movement. You know, he said obviously there's no back door. There is no way out. And so he was taking time and dawdling on. So there is a need for, if you want to call it pressure, there is a need for a woman to establish expectation. Women, there's a need for you to establish expectation. You must establish expectation, so he expects so he knows what to expect. I put this up on the thing. I said, the silent expectation is the loudest killer. Why? Because when you don't speak about your expectation, the cry that you have when you realize a person is unwilling to meet the expectation is a very loud cry. You understand? Everybody feel it. Yeah, but if you don't express that outwardly, we don't know. Okay?
That's because that's how men feel.
Man.
See, I wish I had done that. I did it. I did that, but I did it after we got engaged. Because I didn't want to tell that harsh truth. Like, I'm really not ready.
Right.
And it's hard. But, you know, so...
Because I wasn't ready neither, bro.
Exactly.
When I got engaged, I wasn't ready.
Right. But my mistake was waiting until after we got engaged and say, hey, I'm not ready. And that was a very hard...
The beauty of it is that around the video as well, they were talking about how he was trying... That one of the guys saying that he wants to get it out of his system. And I think this is a really interesting conversation because, you know, we talk about getting things out of your system, but, you know, you wouldn't expect your woman to do the exact same thing. It's an entitlement problem. It's a privilege problem that a lot of men have. I always say this, that men, if women were doing the same thing and had the same ability to get away with what you do, we've got the privilege that white people got to black people. We do things that we know we'll get away with. And so therefore we do things and say, I was young. There is no I'm young for cheating. There is no I am young for being polygamous. Listen, you know that there are society constructs that are telling us this is right or wrong. I'm not even bringing the God side into it, because obviously that's another aspect, but he would have known that behavior was wrong. Now, can he say he was young? Now, let me tell you this, I've cheated in the past, right? And I can't tell you I was young and that's why I did it. No, I wasn't young. Okay, I took advantage. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I love what Devel says. It wasn't a mistake. I knew exactly what I was doing. I wanted to get. I didn't want to hurt her, but I wanted to get away with something. Yeah, I wanted to do this, and I wanted to do it because I was selfish. Right? I was greedy. Okay, rather than just exiting the relationship and doing this, I like the safety of having a girl there and doing what I was doing at the same time. Right? It's a fear thing. You must understand that. So that's one aspect of cheating. And so people getting things out of their system, fine, go get it out of your system. Get it out of your system when you're single. Don't get it out of your system when you've got a relationship, because that's selfish, that's fear-based acting. And again, it talks to the whole part of monogamy and why people are so afraid of monogamy. The reason why people are so afraid of monogamy is because they are scared of having to surrender to the other person. Because in polygamy, you don't surrender to anybody. It's the whole point. In polygamy, you do as you please so long as you keep to the rules. Yeah? So if I establish a rule, don't fall in love. Okay, but I want to have sex. So now you don't control your sexual urges. You don't put yourself into discipline. You say, I'm going to let myself be free. Alright, okay, cool. You can not have sex, but you can have an emotional connection. Alright, so I don't control my sexual urges, but I don't control my emotional connections either. Right? All of these are to do with the fact that we do not want to surrender parts of ourselves to sacrifice and say, hey, this part of me, I'm going to surrender it to you. Because a monogamous relationship is about surrendering to the other person. Right? It's about, and the word that comes up, compromise all the time. And sometimes we are over-compromising in certain situations. It's never a balanced affair. Saying that one of the biggest issues that herself and Devel have been having is around sex. And I think this is a really critical conversation around sexual intimacy. Now, I'm not in a relationship, so I'm not really trying to go too deep into that. But the truth of the matter is, as Devel was complaining in the original video, it was around the frequency of sex. Not only that, actually, the actual podcast that I watched, it was around the intimacy of it and the fact that he wanted to be desired. And this is why it goes back to my original point about understanding why cheating happens. Cheating happens because people want to feel desired. Yeah? I want to feel desired. And that is actually also the starting block of sin. It's mad. Like, if you're not religious, don't worry, but still get it. The starting block of sin, which is to break or be disobedient to the transgression of the laws of God, okay, is the starting point is desire. And desire is intrinsic. It is within you, okay? It is a darkness that is within you, okay? And the desire goes forth, and you know, the scripture in James, we're going to read it, James 1, read it. It talks about how sin gives birth. You know what I mean? To thought. It's like it gives birth to thought. It gives birth then to action. And that gives birth to death. Right? Because whenever you sin, there's death. Death of relationship, death of trust, death of how you feel. And you know, Devel makes it very clear when he cheated, he was not exactly happy about this. Like he's not like he was jumping from the rooftops. He realized it wasn't worth it. Right? And so in dealing with the Devel and Khadeen situation, I think there's something that was really interesting as well when dealing with high value male, low value male as well. You know, when it comes to this monogamy as well situation, you know, Khadeen expressed that she expected the monogamy, right? But I felt like she was obviously under pressure when she was asked questions. Although she would have taken the time and really came at the question properly. She expected loyalty, faithfulness, trust, right? You know, in her relationship. We have a silent expectation that the person will not step out with another person. That's gifted. That's what we have in this culture and this society. And then I think what was interesting was that when they spoke about their cheating, it was quite interesting. And the reason why it was quite interesting was because she mentioned how he cheated. And I think this is something...
Your alignment is for your life.
then for other people it may seem like a mistake. But no, I made that decision and I gotta own it. So I made the decision.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm interested to hear what our expert today is going to say about that, because that was something that
our expert.
Yeah, that was something that I was kind of like.
And the reason I mention this is because I believe it plays into that conversation that they had. I always believe that this is the starting block for something. So, in the conversation that they have, in their podcast previously, when Devel admits to cheating, he states obviously he cheated, and when she asked him, he admitted straight away. When the reverse happened, where she was doing sexting or an emotional cheating, she actually didn't admit to it at first.
So that's where we differed in our scenarios. He was just like, you saw it, that's what it was, here it is.
Right.
Me, I'm just like, well, you only saw this bit that really wasn't sexting in that moment, but it doesn't make sense, and it would just became a mess.
Forthright up front about it.
Yeah, exactly. So for him now, he's just like, well, damn, what else didn't you tell me?
Right. What else are you
leaving out? Yep. Like, it's convenient that we didn't see all the text messages. You were deleting text messages.
Now, let me tell you something. When you don't admit to something like this at first, and the person has to find out dribs and drabs, you'll never be fully trusted. Now, he said obviously he made his peace with the situation, but I'm telling you now, I know in the back of his mind, as a man, I know in the back of his mind, there's a part of him that don't trust that she told him the whole truth. Now, has he made his peace with it? Yes, part of him would have made his peace with it. Why? Because he cheated first.
What I do hear, though, is that you've made your peace with it. So if she has or if she hasn't, you've made your peace. And if she were to share truth that is in line with your peace, then it also helps to lower the blow. Like, okay, well, in my mind, I thought that this may have happened. Then that helps to lessen or lower the blow. And hopefully, in our minds, we're thinking that we're protecting our heart by saying, okay, it already happened.
So it's like he'll make peace with it. But the fact is, when she wasn't honest about that, I was like, oh, okay, that's something that's always going to come up. Obviously, the fact that he's admitted to cheating, and the reason why he cheated was because there was problems within the relationship. I think I made this point on the podcast. I said, listen, the reason why it was important for him, or important for why I shouldn't say it. The reason why it was a better off situation for the human psychology of a mind, for him to say, I cheated because you weren't doing X, Y, and Z, is better than saying, I cheated because I just could. It really will mess with your mind when you realize somebody can cheat on you just because they could. Rather than saying, I cheated on you because X, Y, and Z. Because X, Y, and Z says, I can do something about it. Which she states in the podcast. There's something I could have done about it. I have to look at myself and realize that some things I need to change, And so I understand that. But had he cheated and there was no explanation, it's wild. It's just something that he wanted to do because he gave into the temptation. Whew, that would be scary. Because that's unprovoked, right? And so when we have this discussion later, in this podcast discussion about monogamy and expectations, it sounded like his expectation was that she would meet his sex drive, and when she doesn't, why would you ask for marriage, right? Why would you ask for marriage? Why would you ask for this ultimate commitment if you're not ready to ultimately commit in this area too? And so I do hear him on that point, because sexual intimacy is a big thing. I know that she's had 3 kids. I know that she's working. I know she's gone through things. But sexual intimacy is a huge thing. And I don't think that it should be downplayed. It's not an excuse to go out and cheat, but it shouldn't be downplayed. There needs to be sufficient conversation around it. Sexual therapy, if you want to go and get that too, that may help. Because there are root issues as to why, potentially at the point when he cheated on the first kid, Jackson, I believe. There's a root issue of why he stepped out, but there's also a root issue as to why she felt like she couldn't meet his needs, and why they've still been struggling to meet each other's needs. So I think this conversation has a core issue, which is that sex is predominantly the big thing. But I wanted to talk about the other issues around it, which was monogamy, and the fact that, listen, monogamy benefits those who are not high-valued males, because high-valued males would have access to many women, whereas the lower-valued male, the average male, it suits him because that woman now can only look at him. Because in hypergamy, where you marry up, she would naturally be looking upwards at a better male resources and power and status. But she won't do that because in this society where there is a smaller gap between rich and poor, and there's a focus on monogamy, she will focus on her man and the man in front of her, and she'll surrender and say, I'll make do with this. Yeah? And so it's understandable, you know, it's understandable that's what's happened here. But yeah, in terms of obviously Khadeen and Devale, I think it's quite an interesting conversation that probably could go a bit further. You know, if anything pops into my head, I'll kind of, but I wanted to let you know, guys, comment down below, let us know your thoughts. What do you guys kind of think about this particular topic and subject as well? Appreciate you guys, stay locked, stay loaded, more love, we appreciate you.